Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with an off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook video. I'm going to produce this at least once a week during the off-season between now and May to keep you informed on different things going on related to the upcoming hurricane season, as well as keeping you informed about disruptive weather for the lower 48 and other tropical cyclone activity around the globe. We'll take a look at that in a minute. We did have an area of interest. It was 91L out in the Atlantic. Now it has become much more frontal in nature, and you can tell by the comma shape to it. Once in a while you get these low pressure areas that will develop here in the subtropics out of little pieces of energy that rotate around these high pressure cells that are sitting up over the Atlantic. They can try to acquire tropical characteristics from time to time. This one gave it a shot, but it has run out of time and is now much more frontal in nature, more typical of a mid-latitude storm than anything tropical. One of the things that we'll be keeping an eye on in the off-season is the sea surface temperature anomaly map. The Atlantic basin here, we see very warm sea surface temperatures relative to normal, running at least a degree or so Celsius above normal from Africa over through the eastern Caribbean. We want to see if this holds through next year. We have a long way to go, obviously, but this is one of the easier climate signals that we can track. In addition, we can see what's going on here in the Pacific Ocean with the El Nino Southern Oscillation phenomenon, or ENSO. Will there be an El Nino where the water out here is warmer than normal, which is where we were looking like we were headed this past season, or will we see more of this blue coloring show up and expand out here to the west with time, indicating a more La Nina type pattern or an abnormal cooling of the Pacific? We'll just have to wait and see. But the good thing is we can track this on a weekly and monthly basis. This is the sea surface temperature subsurface analysis. This is back in July. The surface is up here at the top, and then at the bottom of each particular window is about 300 or 400 meters. And then you have the East Pacific and then the West Pacific. And you can see we had a warm pool of water covering most of the Pacific Ocean back in the summer. In August, though, once we got to August, it started to relax a little bit. And then in September, we lost a lot of that warmth in the upper ocean in the tropical Pacific. And then finally in October, we started to really lose that warmth, and cold anomalies started to show up with only a very limited area of warmer than normal subsurface temperatures in the ocean, in the tropical Pacific. November's analysis hasn't come out yet, to my knowledge. Maybe next week when I do the video blog next Monday, it will, and I can show you. But this is something that we can track regularly, as well as what's called the SOI, or the Southern Oscillation Index. Typically when you see it negative like we do here, this is of course zero or neutral. Once it goes below zero and stays there, this is the pressure pattern between Tahiti and Darwin, indicating what the pressures are and the airflow pattern is like in the tropical Pacific. So when we have a strongly negative SOI, that's typical of an El Nino situation. And when we have strongly positive, like we did last season and through 2010 as well, you typically have cooler than normal sea surface temperatures in the Pacific due to the way the trade winds react. A negative SOI typically relaxes the trade winds in the tropical Pacific, and you warm the area along the equator, and you get sort of an El Nino event taking place. And right now, the SOI is at positive. There it is right there, positive 4.4. So we are not anywhere near El Nino category or threshold. There it is there. The last 30 days have been pretty steady. No wild swings up or down. This too, something that we can track in the off season, which will shape what next year's Atlantic hurricane season has in store in terms of overall activity. So we'll check on that once a week as well. In the Pacific, the Western Pacific, we do have a typhoon, a super typhoon. I believe you pronounce it Bopha. The PH is silent, so there's no F sound. It's just Bopha. And top winds are 160 miles per hour, and it is headed right for the southern Philippines. This is going to be a very, very bad situation for these folks. Looking at the satellite picture, the very latest, a very well-defined eye with a round central dense overcast associated with this thing, and it's going to move right in here over the next few hours into the southern Philippines. bringing a lot of moisture even on the north side of it, flooding, storm surge, huge waves in this area. You get a lot bigger waves in the Pacific with these typhoons due to the very deep water, but very well established outflow. I mean, you can see it has that tropical storm symbol to it. Look at that. Very well defined tropical cyclone, typhoon in this case. And a typhoon is the same thing as a hurricane, it just has the name of typhoon. It's no different. Counterclockwise rotation because it's north of the equator, and it's just called a typhoon in that part of the world. Going to be a real big disaster here. They're a little bit more prepared overall, the infrastructure, because they're dealing with these things on a regular basis, but there is a lot more vulnerable population in this part of the world in some areas as well, so we'll be wishing for the best as this pushes off, and across the Philippines it'll be disrupted significantly as it does so. In the lower 48, the weather fairly calm for most of the country, with the exception of the Pacific Northwest, where a pretty potent storm system is prompting all kinds of watches and warnings. Here is the Pacific Northwest right here, California, the Baja, just to get your bearings. Storm after storm after storm coming in, as low pressure in the upper atmosphere is sitting off the Pacific Northwest coast, driving that energy in. On the surface, it looks like this. You can see this low pressure area coming in, spreading its precip into western parts of Canada and Washington, Oregon, Northern California. The upper levels look like this. Here is the Pacific West Coast. There you go, like that. So you got all this energy diving in, carving out this deep trough, but very sharp. Lots of energy in here, driving all that precip into the west. Meanwhile, in the east, very warm because of an increase in the heights of the atmosphere. So you have this ridge sitting out here over the east, and everything has to kind of go up and over that for now. In the next 8 days, the GFS indicating a very deep trough to dig in to the nation's midsection. This will still keep the east nice and warm, but wow, that's a pretty deep trough for the nation's midsection. Could have some very cold air try to drain in about the next week to 10 days down the nation's heartland. We'll have to wait and see. So that's a look at all things going on in the Western Pacific, a couple of snapshots of what to look forward to as we track a few of the climate pieces, the larger climate signals in the off-season in the Atlantic and the Pacific, and then of course our lower 48 weather. That's what we'll do once a week, hopefully every Monday, but at least once a week on a regular basis. Check the app, Hurricane or Hurricane HD, for the latest video blog, and I'll do my best to keep you informed with this kind of information during the off-season. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, my website. Always a privilege and a pleasure to produce these videos for you. I'll be back with another one for you next week.